Hi, everyone. For this meeting, participants will be muted and the chat will be disabled. I'm going to do that right now. Just give me a second. There we go. And I'm going to mute people and then unmute Dana or Robin. Just a second. Sorry if I'm asked to unmute. Did you get that prompt there, Robin?
Yes.
Great. Okay. At the end of the meeting, instructions will be given on how to unmute and chat will be enabled so newcomers and sponsors can leave their information. We will now get started. And I've started the recording. Let's take a moment of silence to meditate and invite God into our meeting. We'll follow that with the Serenity Prayer. Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. So my name is Terry Lynn. I'm a recovered Al-Anon. Welcome to our Al-Anon Big Book Recovery Foundation meeting of the Al-Anon Big Book Recovery Group. Today is January 11th, 2026. My thingy off. The Al-Anon family groups are a fellowship of relatives and friends of alcoholics who share their experience and knowledge in order to solve their common problem. We believe alcoholism is a family illness and that changed attitudes can aid recovery. Al-Anon is not affiliated with any sect, denomination, political entity, organization, or institution, does not engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any cause. Al-Anon has but one primary purpose: to help families of alcoholics. We do this by practicing the 12 steps, by welcoming and giving comfort to families of alcoholics, pardon me, and by giving understanding to the alcoholic. This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in our program of recovery are welcome. You need not identify yourself nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected, and we ask that you protect ours. Before we begin our foundation meeting, we will review the tradition of the month. And our tradition, so it's the first month. The tradition is our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends upon unity. So this just refers to the fact that we're not going to do anything as individuals that's going to affect our group as a whole, because if our group falls apart, we don't have a group and we can't recover. And I'm going to leave it at that so we can get right into our meeting. We are doing a foundation meeting today, and we are blessed to have a speaker today to do the foundation, and her name is Robin R. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Robin.
Thank you, Terry Lynn. I am Robin R. I am an Al-Anon, and I have been in Al-Anon since 2006. So I've been doing this a while, and I have learned that using the wisdom that we've gleaned from the fellowship of AA and what they use in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is a good thing for Al-Anons as well. Because it says in Tradition 5 of Al-Anon, each Al-Anon family group has but one purpose: to help families of alcoholics. We do this by practicing the 12 steps of AA ourselves, by encouraging and understanding our alcoholic relatives, and by welcoming and giving comfort to families of alcoholics. And my sponsor taught me that the instructions for working and practicing the 12 steps of AA are in this book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's why I've learned to study and practice this program from this book. The textbook for how to work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and use it in my life to work the program of Al-Anon, which is the same program but applied to my problem. And it's really important to understand that because my problem is a different problem than the alcoholic problem, but I apply the same solution. And so in order to understand what that solution is and how to apply it, I need to go to the book that gives me those instructions. And that happens to be the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that is what they used until they wrote their own literature. So I like to go back to the original stuff that worked so well back in the day. And that's what my sponsor does. And so that's what we do. And when I say that's what we do, that's what many of us in this fellowship still do. And so I'm going to refer to it throughout this this talk. So if you have one with you, please follow along. So I'm going to start off on the preface, and it's in the second full paragraph in the preface says, because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left untouched in the course of revisions made for the second, third, and fourth editions. Okay, so what that means is they have not changed it since they first came out with the first edition, and that was almost 100 years ago. So the program of recovery, the instructions for working it, they have not changed it since that time. And because it works so well. And so, it's like they're not going to reinvent the wheel, right? So let's skip over to forward to the first edition. And page XIII or Roman numeral 13, however you like to think about that. If you have a fourth edition of this book, if you have a third edition of this book, it is Roman numeral 11 or XI. All right, it says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered with an ED, not recovering, from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. And we think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. So understanding this information from the standpoint of being the loved one of an alcoholic is helpful as well. So if I get all this history about where this book came from, it's going to help me understand why it's important to go ahead and use it, and why alcoholics still use it today in their recovery program, and why it's still relevant for me today as well, as someone who's using it for my textbook as well, because it's still relevant today. And if they're going to use it to recover, and my problem is very similar in nature, and my solution is exactly the same, then I can use it as well. But basically, a lot of times we hear people say in our fellowship that we're recovering, that we're never going to recover from this problem. But here in the big book, it says that we do recover, and that alcoholics recover, that they have recovered with an ED. And what are they recovered from? A seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And until they found this solution, it was absolutely hopeless. And it's telling us here that they're going to show us precisely how to recover. That's the point of this book. That's the main purpose of this book, to show us exactly how to recover, to give us instructions. So why was this hopeless? Well, it's a hopeless state of mind and body. And that's because once the alcoholics started drinking, they had an allergic reaction, which we'll get into more in a minute, that kept them drinking. It wouldn't allow them to stop. And once they passed out or got separated from the alcohol, then their mind would take them back to it. So then they would start again, and it would be this endless cycle. And then they would drink themselves to death. That was why it was hopeless. And then once they found this solution, then it was only seemingly hopeless because now they had this solution. So for an Al-Anon such as myself, I'm going to find out that my mind works the same as an alcoholic's, and it's going to lead me back into a pattern of thinking that's going to cause my behavior to keep doing things that are very destructive and counterproductive, etc. And I'm going to get into that here in a little bit. But the hopeful thing about this paragraph is that this book is going to tell me exactly precisely how these people, these first 100 people, recovered from this hopeless state of mind and body. And therefore, I'm going to learn how to be able to do that myself. Okay. Let us turn over to Roman numeral 28, or XXB, I, in the doctor's opinion. If you have a fourth edition, if you have a third edition of the big book, then that's going to be Roman numeral 26, or XXVI. And the first three words on that page are going to be craving for liquor. And what this is going to tell us here is in the first full paragraph, it says, "We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve." Okay, let me break that down. First of all, I, as an Al-Anon, need to understand a few things. My problem here, I have a problem where I believe that my loved one is drinking themselves to death or just has a really bad drinking problem and they need to stop. And it's my job to help them see that they have a problem and help them see maybe how to stop doing that. And that for whatever reason, they seem to not be stopping, and that maybe I can help them. And that I'm going to keep trying to help them because for whatever reason, despite all my efforts, they're not stopping. And so it's really important for me to understand why that is the case. Why are they not stopping? And because they're not stupid, although maybe I think they are. You know, questions run through my mind all the time. Are they stupid? Do they not care? Do they not realize what's going to happen in their life if they don't stop doing these kind of things? That sort of thing. But this big book tells us, no, that's not it at all. There's actually something going on in their mind and in their body that keeps them going back to that first drink. And that once they take the first drink, they can't stop. And there is something actually physically going on, and that this is actually an illness, a disease. And medical science has found that to be the case. And I need to understand this as the loved one of an alcoholic because I actually have a very similar problem going on in my mind. And it's going to tie in a little bit here. But one thing that's important for me to understand is this doctor, Dr. William D. Silkworth, back in the 1930s, he was a neurologist, but he lost his job in the Depression. And so he was working for this treatment facility for alcoholics and drug addicts. That was the only job he could get at the time. So there he was working there. And he noticed that about 9 out of 10 people that he helped, um, it was working for them. And he gave them the treatment of the day, which was good talking to, and hydrotherapy and belladonna therapy. And hydrotherapy is water therapy, whatever that means. And belladonna is a toxin, but I guess they gave it to him in a way that was helpful at that time. And 9 out of 10 people this helped, presumably because they never came back again. 1 out of 10 people, however, kept coming back to the facility over and over and over again. And each time they were worse than the previous time. And he developed this theory about why that was, what's going on with these people, because they understand that they can't keep doing this or it's going to kill them. But they keep doing it anyway. And they're not stupid people. What's going on with them? And so he developed a theory that there's 2 things going on with them. They have a problem with their body and they have a problem with their mind. And one of them I just read about was the allergy. And that once they take it into their body, they have an allergic reaction. An allergic reaction is just simply any reaction, abnormal reaction that one has when they put a substance in or on their body. And the way that this allergic reaction was manifesting in these alcoholics was that they would have this craving for more alcohol. So they would take a drink and this allergic reaction would happen and they would crave more alcohol. And the more they drank, the more they would crave. And we're not talking about a craving like, oh, hey, chocolate sounds like a good idea. I think I'll go buy a chocolate bar. And then they would eat a chocolate bar and then their craving for chocolate would be satisfied. And I know this doesn't work for compulsive eaters, so please, for compulsive eaters out there, forgive me. I happen to be one myself, so I know that this is not valid for you guys, but for the rest of the world, this analogy works. Okay, so the more chocolate one eats, the less one has a craving for it, the more that craving is satisfied, right? I've had my chocolate bar. I'm satisfied. I don't need chocolate for a while, right? I might even eat a second one. But then I've had enough and I don't need any more for a while. Same with pizza. Might feel like having some pizza today. That's a craving. That's what we call a craving. This is not the same thing with these alcoholics. Once they have the alcohol, then this craving develops and they want more. And the craving never gets satisfied. It's more and more and more. And for a person that doesn't have such a craving, that doesn't ever happen, ever. They will eventually have enough to drink and they'll decide to stop. So you can't, with someone who has this craving, there is no such thing as talking them out of it. There's no such thing as saying, you've had enough, why don't you stop? That would be like someone who's allergic to penicillin and you say, you've had enough penicillin, why don't you not go into anaphylactic shock? It just doesn't work that way. They're going to have that reaction no matter what. It's going to happen. So the idea here is don't drink alcohol. Just don't drink it at all because you're allergic, right? So that's what they're getting to here. And they're saying, these people have it and other people never have it. People who are not alcoholic never have this reaction. Okay, so that's the point there. All right, let's go down to the bottom of this same page. And it says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. drinks which they see others taking with impunity after they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of the spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. Okay, so I just read a lot there. I'm trying to get through this alcoholic piece as quickly as I can so I can get more to the Al-Anon piece. But what I want you to keep in mind is that everything I'm reading here now about this next part applies to Al-Anons as well. Okay, so that piece about the allergy, it's annoying, it's horrible, because like if I go to a party with an alcoholic and they start drinking, they can become really, really obnoxious, right? We've all experienced that. And we're like, okay, you've had enough. Let's stop there, and maybe we try taking their drinks away from them, or you know, we try talking them out of drinking further. We try taking their drinks away from them. We finally just try to go home, take them home with us, that kind of thing, to get them to stop behaving like that. But it can get ugly when you try to take drinks away from an alcoholic or hide them or whatever, because and we didn't know why. I didn't know why anyway. Maybe you did, but I didn't. This craving is set in, and it's something bigger than either they or I could control. Okay. So, but let's go over here to the next piece, which is this mental piece, and it's this obsession. So let's say there's no alcohol in their system. They've slept it off, and they've decided after what happened last night, they're never going to do it again. They've ended up in jail, let's say, and bad things have happened. They've wrecked their car. They're never going to do it again. They promise, they swear, they mean it. You hook them up to a lie detector test, and they're telling the truth. They mean it. They're never going to drink again. Yet here they are 3 days later, and they're drunk again. What's happened? Well, what's happened is this obsession has taken hold and convinced them that this time it's going to be okay. They can drink safely again. That's crazy, right? And yes, truly, it is crazy. There is something wrong with their mind. And truly, it is a mental illness as well as a physical illness. That's why it's bodily and mentally affecting them. They don't think right. There is something wrong with their mind, and their mind will convince them truly that indeed they can safely drink again. And you can't talk them out of that. You can try. I've tried. And I've also tried to delay them from drinking so that they can at least get to a place where I can monitor their drinking, you know. So like at least hold off on before you start so you can get here. So I can at least, we can spend the evening together and have a good time before you start drinking, so you can drink here safely and we can have a good time. But if you start drinking before you get here, you'll never get here. So really I just want to spend the evening with them. It's not about them being safe. It's about me wanting to spend time with them, if I'm being honest. So I'm trying to delay their drinking because I know I can't stop it altogether. I get to this point but the point is that their mind will tell them this because in the interim between when they promise they're never going to drink again and when they actually start, the big book here tells them they get irritable, restless, and discontent. And the only thing that's going to solve that is a drink. And their mind isn't going to come right out and say, hey, the only thing that's going to solve this is a drink. It's going to subtly or not so subtly say, let's have a drink. And they're going to do it. And it is so powerful, but it's so subtle at the same time that person is going to be truly convinced that they can do this, even though at the same time they know they can't. So they have two things going on in their mind at once, a sane part and an insane part. And those two things are going to be battling it out. And the insane part will always win. And this is what I, as an Al-Anon, need to understand. This is a mental illness. I cannot win against it. And that insane mental illness part will always win. Will always win. I need to understand this. It's not sane. It's not rational. And it doesn't matter what I say or do to make this work. It will always win. Okay, so I have this going on with my own mind. And this is the part of me that tells me that I can actually solve this problem. I can actually talk them into not drinking again, or I can actually get them to go to treatment, or I can actually get them to, I can minimize the consequences of their drinking, or I can do this, or I can do that and make it better, or I can help them see how crazy what they're doing is, and I can just help them understand. And once they understand, they'll stop doing it, and or they'll be willing to go to treatment, or the treatment will actually take this time. Lots of different things, and I will believe that it will work this time. It's the same concept going on in my mind that goes on in their mind. That's what I need to understand about myself. So once I understand, the step one for them is we came to believe, shoot, I always forget this when I'm presenting the actual steps and stuff. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable, which is actually the same for both Al-Anons and alcoholics, but for different reasons. So they're powerless over the allergy, they're powerless over the obsession, and I'm powerless over the alcohol because they're beyond human aid, and I'm a human, and so I can't aid them, right? I am powerless over someone who's allergic to strawberries. Once they eat those strawberries, I'm powerless to stop that allergic reaction from happening in them, right? So I'm powerless to stop them from drinking once they start because they're having an allergic reaction. So I can't stop them from drinking at that party. I need to just let them do it. Okay, I can't stop them from starting drinking at any point because that is the disease working within them, and I can't stop it. So I'm powerless over alcohol and the disease of alcoholism and how it functions in that alcoholic. I'm powerless over all of that, and I need to accept that in myself, but I'm unable to. So I'm powerless. And once I start, okay, so there's that aspect of it. My life has become unmanageable because of this obsession. I may say to myself, I am never going to try to manage this situation again. I am never going to try to control this alcoholic to do X, Y, Z. I'm never going to try to control any of that because now I understand, or whatever, because I've tried everything and none of it works. Because every time I do, we get into such a big fight, or it creates so many problems, or creates so much havoc. I'm just going to stay out of it, or I end up going broke, or whatever. I may tell myself I'm never going to do this again, and I may mean it. You hook me up to a lie detector test and I will pass. I'm never going to do this again. But you give me some time and I'll do it again. Because why? Because there's something wrong with me up here. My brain is broken. And once again, I will start to believe that this time it's going to be different. This time it's going to work. Just like the alcoholic believes that this time it's going to be different and I can drink successfully. I believe this time I can help this alcoholic successfully. It's the same problem. That's why we use the same solution. So now, what is the solution? It says on page XXIX, on the other hand, and I'm on the first full paragraph there, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, or easily able to control his desire to control the alcoholic, The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. And those simple rules are the steps of Al-Anon or the steps of AA, whichever we're talking about. So in this case, we're talking about Al-Anon. So in order for me to get better, I need to have a psychic change. And the way to have a psychic change is to get connected, or well, in this case, is to follow these few simple rules, to follow these 12 steps of Al-Anon. And when I do that, I'm going to have this psychic change. And I'm going to explain why, because I used to not understand how do these 12 steps have anything to do whatsoever with solving this problem that I'm having, because I didn't understand how they were connected, because they don't seem connected, right? Well, first of all, I need to have a psychic change, but I need to understand what's going to create that psychic change, because there's a lot of people out there who can have a psychic change just by going to a therapist, right? I need to understand that all of my efforts to stop managing and controlling this alcoholic, and even to stop thinking about it, because I need to understand that it's not even just about my actions, it's about my thoughts leading up to it. That's where my problem stems, is in my brain. And it says that on page 23. Let's go over to page 23. It says these observations, first paragraph on page 23, these observations, and they're talking about the observations of someone taking actions. And in this case, they're talking about the alcoholic taking the action of starting drinking. But in my case, as an Al-Anon, that would be the case of starting taking an action to control an alcoholic. So let's say my first action is often to text the alcoholic. Like, I haven't heard from him today. Let's see how he's doing. I'll just innocently in my mind start it off that way. I wonder how he's doing today. I haven't heard from him. I love him so much. I'm being silly about this, but you get the idea. I would be in relationships with them, romantic relationships, but it can be any kind of relationship. It can be your kid, it can be your spouse, it can be your parent. I haven't heard from them today. I wonder how they're doing. And behind that, the real motive is I wonder if they're drinking. But also, I wanted reassurance from them, because really what I'm trying to get here is I want my well-being, my emotional well-being, or my physical, or both, satisfied by this person. So if I'm having a romantic relationship with them, I want to hear from them, and I want them to tell me how much they love me, right? And if I haven't heard from them that day, I want to know how much they love me. So I'm going to start it off, right? I'm going to just say, good morning, how are you today? Or something silly like that. I'm going to just start off with that text. Seems innocent enough, right? Well, lo and behold, that is like an alcoholic taking their first drink. I have started a spree and I don't even realize it. Because once I take that first action, I'm going to take another and another and another, and I'm not going to be able to control myself, and I'm going to go on a spree. And because I'm trying to get them ultimately to do what I want, and maybe they will, but ultimately maybe they won't, and a lot of times they don't. I want them to quit drinking for good and all and come back and be the partner I want them to be. And is that really going to happen? Because even if they quit drinking, are they ultimately going to do everything I want? No. So even if in this one instance I get the ultimate the satisfaction of what I want in this moment, then there's going to come along another thing that I want them to do later that day. So this is, one little instance after another of trying to control them. And a lot of times it would start a fight. And so here we go, right? I'm starting the day already trying to get my way throughout the day and get my needs met through this person. And we're going to see if they're going to cooperate. But lo and behold, they don't respond in the timely enough fashion, or maybe they don't respond at all. So I'm going to send another text, and then another text, and then another text, right? And then I'm going to start calling and then calling and calling. And then, well, maybe I'm going to have to do a drive-by, see where they are. Are they even at home? I drive by, they are at home. Well, look at that. Why haven't they been responding to me? Well, maybe they're drunk. Well, if they're drunk and passed out, okay, but maybe they just don't want to talk to me. How dare they not want to talk to me? Why not? Maybe I should go inside because they won't answer the door. This is getting ridiculous. This is starting to look borderline illegal. What am I going to do about that? I'm looking inside, the window. You see where this is going, right? This is totally irrational. And all I've done is started texting. And okay, it's sounding out of control, isn't it? But that is just my actions. And this is just about how, that's just the first part. Once I start, I can't seem to stop. I can't control my behaviors, right? Let's say I go through that whole spree, it goes badly, and I emerge remorseful, just like this cycle says, and I say, I'm never going to do that again. We break up, we're not together anymore. I say, I'm never going to do that again. Lo and behold, give me a month, the alcoholic comes crawling back and says, I'm in jail. I need your help. Please come bail me out or pay my whatever or whatever. And maybe I do it again. And I do it again because, he sounded so sincere and he really does love me and I love him and I don't want him to suffer and blah, blah, blah. That is this cycle that they're describing right here. And my life is unmanageable because I can't manage that decision to never do it again. I've said I'm never going to do this again, yet here I am doing it again. And that's why my life becomes unmanageable. I end up getting myself in all kinds of trouble, financially perhaps, um, just strung out emotionally, um, financially, perhaps even legally. Like I said, I'm borderline, there was a time when I was potentially going to climb the fence into the backyard of my boyfriend, quasi boyfriend. He really wasn't even my boyfriend. He was an ex, and I wanted to get back together with him. And I was going to climb over that fence, but the neighbor was out front doing yard work. And so I'm like, well, do I risk it? Do I risk climbing that fence when it's daylight and he can see me and he might call the police if I do this? And I had already worked the steps of Al-Anon and I was supposed to not, So I didn't do it because God intervened and kept me from doing it. But I was still crazy in my head. And this is where just thoughts come in, right? And I mentioned it's not even just actions, it's also thoughts. I was still obsessing. So I was clearly not recovered. But I had gone through the steps, so God was still had his hand on me and helped me not do the insane thing, but he didn't remove the obsession. So I was still there obsessing. I was still suffering and I was not free. But I didn't do the insane thing. But I still had the insane thoughts and I was still suffering. And I still went home and I still continued to obsess all day and had the argument with him later and all of that kind of thing. So is my life unmanageable? Yes, because I can't manage that decision to stop obsessing about it, to stop behaving crazy, to stop doing all that stuff. And that's what unmanageability is. And I had tried therapy, I had tried medication, I had tried yoga, I had, all kinds of things, and none of those were working. So it comes down to, do I need to turn to something else, a higher power, something like that? And that's where this program comes in, because what it can do for me, once I realize I can't do this myself, once I understand I'm truly powerless over this, then then something else can help me. So let's turn to page 24. I don't remember if I've read this yet, but it's so important. It bears repeating if I haven't. I don't think I have actually. It says, the fact is that most alcoholics, or Al-Anons in this case, for reasons yet obscure, oh no, this is actually alcoholics, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force. Now, this is Al-Anon also, I'm sorry, all the way. To bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first thought, the first obsessive thought, or the first action, the first obsessive action. So the fact is that most Al-Anons, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in obsessive thought or action. So my willpower, it's like I can't use my willpower to keep me from thinking about this. Once the thought enters my head, it's going to just keep hounding me. It may go away for a time, but it's going to come back. And it's going to come at me from different angles, and it's going to use different kinds of logic to get me to take action. So an obsession is a thought that once it enters the mind, it begins to overpower all the other thoughts. So I may have same thoughts that say, last time I got involved, I nearly went broke and he never quit drinking anyway. And so I'm not going to get involved this time. You know, that's the same thought. The insane thought says, yeah, but last time he wasn't ready to quit. And this time he says he is, right? That's the kind of thinking that goes through my mind. That's the insane thought over here. And it just coming at me from different angles until I will bite, till I will believe one of them and then do it. But it says that, you know, give me a few days after that happened and I'm still going to be strong. My willpower is still going to be strong, but give me a week or a month and it's not going to be strong anymore. That suffering and humiliation that occurred from that time, I'm not going to forget about it, but it's not going to carry the strength and weight that it did to stop me. It's not going to have enough to stop me from taking the action. I'm going to say, yeah, I remember that, but that only happened because, and that's not going to happen this time. So I'm going to do it this time. This time, when I get him out of jail, he's going to really mean it, and he's really going to get help this time, or whatever. Insert your situation here. Think about, did that really affect you that way? Okay, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with Al-Anonic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid and unless locked up may die or go permanently insane. Now, I don't know if I'm going to die or go permanently insane, but I'm going to continue this behavior for the rest of my life. So that's something to think about, okay? Do I really want to continue this behavior for the rest of my life, or do I want to be free? Or do I want to continue to have these thoughts, this thinking for the rest of my life, or do I want to be free? And I have to remember from my own experience, I've shown that even if the alcoholic goes away, I always find another one. It's not like, okay, that relationship is ended, therefore I am free. No, it's not, because the problem isn't the alcoholic, the problem is me. And I'm always going to find another one. And sometimes it will extend to other people that aren't even alcoholics. You know, I do this with my boss, I do this with my coworkers, I do this with, you know, friends. And it's not with everybody across the board. It'll be individual people in my life. So it's like whoever my mind zeroes in on and says, that person needs my help, you know, my individual help. So if you are seriously Al-Anonic, and I'm on page 25 at the bottom of the page. Al-Anonic is we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other is to accept spiritual help. So I've got two choices here. I had tried door number three, which was all the therapy, talk therapy, medication, getting away from the alcoholic, moving to different places. I tried all those things and none of them helped. So I could either continue doing what I was doing, or I could try this spiritual thing, which a friend of mine had tried and it worked for her. So I decided to try it. And that was this program. And so I decided to try it. And so she kind of qualified me. She asked me two questions. This is all I need to ask myself to know whether or not this program will work for me, or whether I need this program, I guess is a better way to say it. One, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, meaning you've ever said to yourself, I am never going to try to get this alcoholic out of trouble again. I am never even going to think about it. I'm never going to obsess about it again. I'm never going to do it. And you meant that because you meant that, not because other situations or loved ones threatened you about it or it became necessary or convenient, but because you meant it from the bottom of your heart. And then you found you did it again. If that's the case, you failed question number one. And you only have to answer yes to one of these two questions, not to both of them, just one. Or if when obsessing or acting out on this, you have little control over the amount you take, or you do, you are probably Al-Anonic or a chronic Al-Anon, meaning once you've started on a course of action or you've started thinking about it, you can't stop. So when I gave that example about the texting, just texting to check on you, see how you're doing, and then you go on a spree. You have little control because all you intended to do was text, and you ended up, God knows where, doing God knows what. Or you ended up going through an emotional, ended up with an emotional hangover at the end of it all. You failed out. And if that be the case, you are probably Al-Anonic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So you only need to answer yes to one of those to be Al-Anonic. And if you answer yes to one, that's where you need a spiritual experience to conquer it. If you answer yes to two, but not one, you can probably get over it with some other kind of help, or you may not need any help at all. But let's go down. To be doomed to an Al-Anonic death or life living that way, or to live life on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. And I say death or life living that way, because living this way, we can die maybe years or even decades earlier because we end up with cancer or heart disease or some other stress-related illness or a stroke or something. It's not going to probably cause us the same kind of immediate death that maybe an alcoholic would have or a drug addict would have or something, but it could. You could be riding along in the same car as the alcoholic and die because he wrecks the car. That happens. Or he could be violent and kill you. That happens too. So, everybody is in different circumstances. You know yours, but it's a difficult life regardless if you stay in that life. So you can be doomed to that kind of life, or you can accept life on a spiritual basis, and that's not always easy to decide on. But if you turn over to page 45, first full paragraph there, it says that lack of power, that's our dilemma. That's our problem. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it has to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. So basically, I have to find another power, and it has to be greater than me. So I can't appeal to a Coke can or a doorknob, which you may have heard about in meetings. I don't know. And it can't be another human. I can't appeal to myself. I can't appeal to a human. Now, getting a sponsor is a human, but they're going to help me get connected to a power greater than myself. But I can't like appeal to my therapist because that's human aid. They're not helping me get connected to a power greater than me. They're just getting me connected to medication or to them. So I need to understand that difference here. I can't just talk to my best friend, or I can't just rely on my brain or myself or a doctor and going to medication and that kind of thing. I have to understand for myself whether that's the case for me. Am I beyond human aid? And those two questions on the previous page will help me understand that for myself. I have to understand that for myself. If I am like that, if I am beyond human aid, then I don't have any power. I'm not, a lot of times people think of powerless as having less power, but no, I have no power. And think about it as a person who's paralyzed and, from the neck down, and the house catches on fire. They can't leave. They're going to burn up and die in that house. It's not like they're just lacking in strength and it's going to be hard to drag themselves out of the house. That's a person with less power. No, they are powerless. They have no power to get out of that burning house. Well, I am powerless, like that person who's paralyzed in the house that's going to burn down. That's how I am about this situation. I am always going to return to trying to help that alcoholic if left to my own devices. So I need to accept that about myself, and I need to find a power greater than myself. And that's what this book is going to help me do. It's going to give me the instructions on how to do it. So I need to ask myself but one short question. I'm on page 47 now. I'm running out of time. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? So if I don't believe that there's a power out there greater than myself, or even if I believe that, but I don't believe that that power is going to restore me to sanity, that's okay. I just have to be willing to believe. And that's enough for this to work. And this is about step 2. So if I believe, so it says, as soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It's been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. So that's step 2 that says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So at step 2, I don't have to believe it. I just have to be willing to believe. And by the time I get to step 12, I will have come to believe. And step 3, let's turn over to page 60, says our description of the Al-Anon, the chapter to the agnostic and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were Al-Anonic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our Al-Anonism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Being convinced of these 3 things, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. So at step 3, I'm just making a decision. Am I going to do this program or am I not? So it's basically, am I going to go on with step 1, which is the problem, or am I going to go on with step 2, which is the solution, the spiritual solution? So if I am, I need to understand I am completely powerless. If I'm going to do this work, I'm going to have to follow I'm going to have to get a sponsor and follow their directions. And that means I'm going to be doing what this book tells me to do. My sponsor is going to give me directions on how to do that. And what that means is they're going to get me connected to a power greater than myself. And that power is going to remove this obsession from me. And once that obsession is removed, my thoughts and my attitude toward life and everyone in it are going to completely change. And I'm going to be a new person. And in order for this to continue that way, though, I'm going to have to continue doing this. And so I'm going to have to continue working these steps. And this is a process. Um, it's not just like a one and done thing. I'm going to have to do it for the rest of my life. Just like I have to eat food for the rest of my life if I want to stay alive, I have to do this for the rest of my life. This is a way of life, and it's turning my life over to this higher power and letting this higher power run my life. I have to be willing to do that regardless of how I feel about that. But I will be thankful for it once I do it because I will be so much happier and I will no longer be tied to the results of what happens with that alcoholic. I will be free, and that alcoholic can live their life and do as they choose, and I will be okay with that. And it's a miracle, but it's really true. That's what really happens. So I'm going to turn it back over to Terry Lynn, and thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your foundation. Robin, not to put you on the spot, but are you willing to answer questions if anyone were to have any?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I will enable people to unmute if they would like to answer questions, or I mean ask questions. If anyone does have, you guys have the ability to unmute, I believe.
Yes, I have several questions, if Robin is
Okay.
willing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you've mentioned it before, and I wonder if you can touch upon it, the two-part illness and the spirit. And it was something in your language about it. And I'm wondering if you could touch on that just a little bit to understand alcoholism a little better.
Okay. So alcoholism, the disease of alcoholism doesn't have anything to do with the spirit. People get confused about that a lot. Alcoholism is a physical and mental disease. That's what, like if you were to go talk to a medical doctor, that's what they would say. So that's what that is. It's a physical and mental illness. The spirit aspect of things, the reason we treat this with a spiritual program is because there is no physical or mental solution, no medical solution to this. But we have found that if you work a spiritual program, it will solve it. So there we use that. Every human being on the face of the planet has a spiritual malady to some degree or another. So we can't classify alcoholism and the spiritual malady as going together in the sense that alcoholism has a spiritual malady and blah, 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 because every human has that. Al-Anons have that. Alcoholics have that. People who have no ism at all have that. And it affects the human being negatively. The spiritual malady does. Every human. Okay. And so this spiritual program that we work is designed for every human and to solve every human's every problem. So if you happen to be an alcoholic or you happen to be an Al-Anon and you work this program, it's going to solve those problems.
Great, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yep.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah. So thank you. Now, I know that there are dual, programs that, and you mentioned you had another program of AA. That's my question is, did you still have to do a step one in Al-Anon, and does that happen?
Yes. Yes. And that's a really good question. So, and this can be confusing for people, especially, well, it can be confusing for everyone, but alcoholics are codependent. Al-Anons are codependent. That is the nature of this problem that we have obsessing about other people and being dependent on them. So an Al-Anon and an alcoholic are codependent on each other. Okay. When an alcoholic recovers from their alcoholism, often that codependency just evaporates as part of the process of working the steps. Meanwhile, the Al-Anon over here is still suffering from their codependency, and that's the Al-Anonism we're talking about. And so as the alcoholic gets better, the Al-Anon gets worse because now they don't have anyone to fix. So they work the 12 steps and they get better. Okay. However, there are some alcoholics out there who separately have an Al-Anon problem that needs to be addressed separately from when they were codependent as an alcoholic. It's like they have a separate thing altogether and they have to deal with it just like an Al-Anon has to deal with their Al-Anonism. So they have to do step 1 and they have to work through all the steps on Al-Anon all by itself. And so they have to hit a bottom on it. They have to, do that whole thing just like an Al-Anon does. But most alcoholics that are codependent don't have to do that.
Great, thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And I am one such, by the way.
Yeah. And thank you. That clarifies. And my last question here, and if anyone else has one, you introduced with Tradition 5 that talks about Al-Anon cooperating with AA.
And participating in the program.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll read that again if that helps.
Yeah.
Let me find it again. Okay. Each Al-Anon family group has but one purpose: to help families of alcoholics. We do this by practicing the 12 steps of AA ourselves, by encouraging and understanding our alcoholic relatives, and by welcoming and giving comfort to families of alcoholics.
Okay. I'm not sure how to frame this question. Maybe you can help. It alludes to that, and I'm not sure. Going back to the pioneers, it sounds like they worked together. And I guess my question is, are they totally different folks? And is that part of the illness to think that AAs are our enemy? I don't know. Maybe you can help me form a question out of that. So.
Well, AA is not your enemy. I will say Bill Wilson, his parents, I believe his father was a brutal alcoholic. So he qualifies for Al-Anon right there. And he wrote to Wives, which is one of the foundational chapters for Al-Anon before they wrote their own literature. So, and I believe, now I don't know this for certain, we'd have to look in the history, but I believe the first several people like Lois and them were taken through the Al-Anon steps by alcoholics. And then after that, they took over taking family members through the steps for Al-Anon.
Yes, that's what I had heard as well. And Ann Smith, obviously, in the home with the Oxford group. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do want to put a qualifier in there. I could be wrong about that. So it might have just been Oxford group people, but I don't think so. I think it was alcoholics that did it because they had a specific understanding. But
All right. If there are no other questions, I think we're ready to close. And again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right, 7th tradition, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. This group does not have a payment structure in place and currently has no overhead expenses. If you would like to fulfill Tradition 7, please send contributions directly to the Al-Anon World Service office by visiting alanon.org. For questions about this meeting, or if you're looking for a sponsor, please send emails to alanonbigbookrecovery@gmail.com. Recordings can be accessed on YouTube by typing at Al-Anon Step Speaker, all one word, at Al-Anon Step Speaker in the YouTube search box, or on Spotify at Al-Anon Step Speaker Series. If you're interested in other Al-Anon meetings that follow the Big Book, please visit alanonbigbooksolutiongroup.org. Now let's have a moment of silence for the Al-Anon who still suffers, followed by the Lord's Prayer, or a prayer of your own choosing, said in silence. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So I am going to end the recording.